I want to welcome you to the first episode of Hey, I'm Listening. It has taken a while to get here, and we actually started our journey with this show a couple of months ago. And there was a point in time where I wanted to shift a few things, and I felt there was a need for a restart. And one of the things that I think is so important for us to do, for me to do, is to introduce myself and to introduce the show and what my desires and my dreams are for Hey, I'm Listening. So you might be asking, well, who is Dr. Joan? And so I want to give you my background and tell you a little bit about myself and what draws me into this space. So my background is actually nursing, and I have a PhD in nursing and mental health promotion. And over the last 7 years, I have been doing a psychotherapy practice. I started a practice under a company called Becoming Inc. And I called it Becoming because through my own journey of healing and through my own experience with storytelling, I've been able to map out a process through which we heal. And so I share that quite often. And I'm now moving into the creation of a certificate program to actually teach people how to use this process to heal. So my journey began in Jamaica. I was born in Jamaica, and I migrated to Canada when I was about 10 years old. And there would be these 3 pivotal moments in time that I would need to heal. And when I actually began that healing journey, that's when some really, truly beautiful things began to happen in my life. I discovered the forgiveness method. Well, I call it the forgiveness method now. I discovered what was called new decision therapy back then, developed by a lady named Candace Blakely. And after looking at the process and then really moving through a powerful dissecting of what forgiveness is, how God sees forgiveness, what it actually does, I actually now integrate this, what I call conscious forgiveness style, into a healing process. And so as I moved through my own journey, there was so much teaching that came forward. But beyond that, all of my spiritual giftings came alive. And this is what I think is most profound for us as a people. I know as Black people, we are a spiritual people. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But the thing is, unless we heal, those giftings, those talents, even our life purpose remains unknown to us. And so I wanted to have this show. I wanted to invite people who have been on that journey. And as they come out the other side of that journey, they step into their purpose to build community, their purpose to present new thoughts, their purpose to write a book, to teach others how to heal, their purpose to unify and bring our nation into this powerful place. I am starting this show because I want us not to just heal ourselves, those of us who are perhaps in our 30s, 40s, 50, and even up. But I think there's a journey that we must partake in, and that is ensuring that our children can also heal themselves. I think this is where the blessings will come from. So I'm so excited about this show. I want to let you know what our goals are because, I've been thinking about this for some time. And the goal is to create a gathering space. I want us to come together. And I want us who are of African ancestry, or what I call the melanated people who are across all of the earth, I want us to be able to come together for it to be safe for us to speak those experiences that we've had, to tell our truth, and to also experience forgiveness as we move with one another and talk about the things that we've experienced. I want our generation to heal. And as we heal, I want us to connect our voices in our own unique way. We are storytellers, and there's a reason why we are storytellers, because through our stories, we can inspire, and we can liberate our minds from all the ways in which it has been locked and imprisoned for so long. And I want to open some doors and talk about spiritual transformation, because I think this is the most essential piece that I want to bring forward with this show. I was watching Dr. Phil just the other day, and there was this dialogue that was happening between what we call the baby boomers, those who are 57 and above, and the Zoomers or the millennials, the Gen Zs, anywhere from 10, I think, up to about 35 now. And one of the things that I noticed was this conversation was happening between these two groups. And at one point, I thought to myself, well, this is really a conversation about nothing, just people kind of tossing around ideas about differences. But at the end of the show, Dr. Phil says, the only thing all of us have to do is go inward. And this is how we connect with one another. We go inward first, and then we learn to love ourselves. As we love ourselves, we connect with our God. And as we connect with our God, we're able to connect with all others. But I noticed something in this show that Dr. Phil had. I noticed the absence of us. Yeah, there was one Black lady that I noticed, but I noticed our absence. And someone made reference to something called the silent generation, right? Remember I talked about the Zoomers or the Gen Zs, 10 to 35, the Boomers, 57 and above. Well, the silent generation is my generation, and we are in between that 35 to 57. And we have been silent. We have been wounded. And a lot of times we've just kind of remained silent, and a lot of people have written us off. But I am not writing us off, because I recognize something. We are the seekers, right? The seekers want to heal. The seekers want to discover the meaning of life. The seekers want to connect. And because of our own stories, that has been a challenge for us, but it has pushed us into a new place. I call it the healing place, right? And so as we've gone into the healing place, we have discovered so many things. I think in this generation, the Xers is what we call them. This is where we're going to find the voices of the many Black, melanated African men and women who have so much to teach us. They have so much to teach us about a new way of life. This show is about sharing knowledge. So some of us know a thing or two. Some of us have been able to heal the mind, heal the body, and we can use this knowledge to inspire a nation to do the same. So on the show, we're going to talk to people who have discovered the healing space, have monitored their own progress through the healing, and have some kind of a roadmap that they can now show to others. And so one of the things I strongly believe, I believe this is a quote from one of Bob Marley's songs. He says, "We all have the answer." And one of the ways that I like to picture the human race is, whether you're male or female, just this one formed body, and Christ as the head, and all of us as the arms, the leg, the chest, every part of the human body. And in order for this human body to function and function well, we have to be able to step into a place where we recognize our parts and begin to play it well. And part of it is we must heal ourselves. We must monitor that process and then begin to share that knowledge in all the ways that we are called to. One of the things that we know through geographical history is that at one point or another, all of the different continents were actually right against one another. They were all formed together. But over time, what has happened is that through a process might be labeled tectonic shifts that actually are our continents have shifted apart. And one might say that that is quite representative of the ways in which the human race has shifted apart and the ways in which we've created these separations that are really false separations. And what we know is this, that in 1562, there was a process that started to unfold, and we would eventually call that the enslavement experience. So what we know is that there was a gentleman, well, we'll call him Captain John Hawkins, because that is what is in the record books. But he was the first known Englishman to include enslaved Africans in his cargo. And it is supposedly approved by Queen Elizabeth during that time. So it is said that he captured about 300 Africans, and he then sailed across the North Atlantic and exchanged them for things like hides, ginger, and sugar. We've been told a story, and the story is that the Black man, the melanated man, originated in Africa. And it is only through the enslavement experience that he's made his way to all the different parts of the world. But the truth is, we've always been here. We've always been on every continent of the world. And part of what has been lost in the history book is the understanding that we've always been here. But what I want to acknowledge is the wound that has been created over the last 460 years, 61, 62 years, depending on which historian you're following. And that wound is the enslavement experience. And so this show is about acknowledging our experience and, quite frankly, celebrating who we are and all of the wonderful ways that we be. And I say we be because being is about existence. And so the show is about highlighting all that is beautiful about those who are of African ancestry. Let's just say it that way. We were the first peoples, and from us evolved a whole bunch of other peoples. And so what we know is we've always been here, that there's a history to our being, that there's a godliness to our being. And I want to recognize that, and I want us to actually get it back. If we are to look at the timelines that have been presented in the Bible, what we know is this: the book of Daniel, and Christ quotes him when he talks about the number of times that we should forgive. The book of Daniel talks about these 7 periods of 7 years, and that what he is telling us is about the ways and the timelines by which God works. And when Christ quotes him and he's speaking to Peter, Peter asked him, you know, how many times should we forgive a brother who has done us wrong? And he responds to Peter. Peter says, 7 times? And he says, no, it's more like 7 times 70 times, And if you go back and actually look at the scripture that Christ was quoting, he was talking about Daniel and this period of time that is 490 years. I have a book, it's called 490. And even at the time when I wrote 490, I didn't recognize that I was going to be speaking about forgiveness, and forgiveness for a period of time that will bring us from this moment in time all the way up to 490 years, which is about the time of a generation, 30 years, right? 30 years from now, it will be 490 years since that enslavement experience began. And what we have to do is we have to heal. And one of the ways I believe that we heal, and as I talk in this show, you'll know that I use the forgiveness method to heal many people. And so one of the ways in which we as a people, as a nation, need to heal is through the forgiveness process. So we all have a story, and I think that's a beautiful thing about us. We have a story, and there's a presentation of that story, and there's the movement through the creation of that story, and that's where our true healing happens. We are a spiritual people, right? And spirituality brings forward wisdom. Seek wisdom, right? Is kind of one of those quotes. Spirituality is about going inward. It's about discovery of self. It's about understanding how we connect to God. And through the process of healing and going inward and discovering all of those things that have ailed us and have taken us out of a space of love and into a space of fear, going inward helps us to understand all of those things and overcome and surmount the fear and then step into our place of power. Spirituality is about stepping into our position as what I call co-creators, right? It's about recognizing that there's a divine power that gives us authority to use our gifts and our talents to change our little part of the world. Spirituality inspires humility and the recognition, again, that we all have the answer, and that through our answers, we can influence others at different levels. And the other thing about spirituality is it humbles us. My position is no higher than your position. And I am no less, I am no higher than you. All I want to do is know the part that I am to play and to play it really well. Deuteronomy 29, verse 29 says that secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us and our children forever, that we may follow all the words of the law. This show is about activating and motivating a generation to use its knowledge, its wisdom, and understanding to create health and well-being for our children and their children's children. It's about co-creating a blessing for a people that has been underestimated, that has been written off, a people pushed out and enslaved and forced to become a copy of what others view as good or beautiful. You could say it that way as well. One unique thing about this show is you will hear me pray or say an affirmation at the end of the show. As a nation, our relationship with God is fundamental to our health and our well-being. And as Christians, we have been entrenched with a doctrine that was taken out of Ethiopia by the Catholics, sifted and changed into their mindset, even reforming Christ and reshaping him in a form that was white versus the form that originally was. The doctrine that we've been taught has been used to control and restrain us, and especially to restrain our spiritual giftings. It was used to ensure that our ancestors would never desire to be free. But the time has come now for our minds, our bodies, our hearts, our spirit, and our souls to be set free. And we don't do this individually. We don't do it alone. We do it together. There is so much power in this book called the Bible, so don't get me wrong. But in order to harvest the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding that is there, we must have a relationship with our God. So over and again, you will hear me begin to talk about God or insert some wisdom from the Bible. Ephesians 4 verses 1 to 6 speaks of unity and maturity in the body of Christ. It says, as a prisoner of the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit. Just as we were called to one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism. And listen to this. One God and Father of all, who is over all, and through all, and in all. We focus on the God that is out there, the God that is above. And certainly, there's a time when we focus on that. But rarely as Christians are we taught to connect with the God that is in and through all of us. We put our attention on laws that are external, even human laws, governmental laws, and less attention is given to the laws that are written on our hearts and the ways in which being Christ inspired, being one with the Holy Spirit, amplifies and allows us to maintain those laws that are in our hearts. We are taught to focus on congregation and the gathering in churches as opposed to oneness and unity with God. We focus on belief rather than transformation. So time and again, you'll hear me engage in conversations with guests that focus on transformation. I will ask questions that bring forward answers to those beautiful life questions like, how did you come to know and understand yourself? How did God transform you? And I might not even put God in there, but how were you transformed once you were healed? What changed? What shifted? How did your thoughts, the way you speak, the way you behave, how did all of that shift once you were healed? How have your thoughts shifted, and how have they prepared you now to teach others what you know? You are going to hear some wonderful people speak. I am so impressed when I engage with them, with the wealth of knowledge that they bring, with the authenticity that they come to this table and this gathering space. I am so impressed by the ways in which their spirituality looks different, and yet we're all moving in one direction. It has been a joy to complete those interviews that I have completed so far. And I want to give you a taste of what those sound like now.
I learned along the way that I actually was so deeply scarred by my parents' situation that I didn't think I would ever love a Black woman. I really didn't think it would ever happen for me. And I didn't even realize that I didn't think, it was so deep intrinsic. It's only through learning later on and through really trying to heal that I realized that was even a thing. Never really had any feelings or emotional attachment to Black women. And I think it was psychological. No, I know it was for sure, because I said, okay, well, it's not just my house. I didn't have one Black friend whose parents were together, not one.
I believe that healthy communication is healing communication. And, there's no one who's perfect. Yeah. So if you're in a relationship with another human being, yes, there's going to be hurt. Yes. So it's really, really important to be able to address our emotional injury, emotional pain with both care and competence. It's not enough to care, because a lot of damage is done by caring people.
But I just had to realize that had it not been for that, I would not have done these things, right? And so let's be really honest and transparent. I went through, I was promiscuous.
Yes.
Because I lost my virginity at a young age, but it wasn't my choice. And so because of that, I was looking for a father. I was looking for love. I grew up in an abusive household already, a physically abusive household.
Yes.
And those were the things that I knew. I knew no different. And so when I began to date as a 16-year-old and 17-year-old, 30 plus and 40-year-old men, right? I thought that was cool. I thought they loved me. I was like, oh, they love me. Really, what do I have to offer a 30-something and a 40-year-old?
So you've listened to some of those wonderful comments as snippets that we have taken to just, offer you a sample. And so I want you to join us each Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern I want you to subscribe to the channel and be prepared to share what is here with family, with friends, with the people you love. If you'd like to be a guest, if you believe that you are one of those, thought leaders or community builders, if you have moved through your journey of healing and transformation, and you now want to share this with someone, I welcome you to the elders table. This is what I call it, the elders table. If you want to be a guest on our show, I'd like to invite you to visit our website at heyimlistening.ca or send me an email at drjoan@heyimlistening.ca. Our first guest is a young man named Jordan Mills. And when I sat down with Jordan a couple of months ago, it was such a delight. Jordan had helped me develop my website, and we prepared to have a launch and a conversation. And I was just blown away by how that conversation went. So I'll invite you to continue listening as you hear that conversation between me and Jordan. So thanks for joining me. I look forward to connecting with you. I'm Dr. Joan Samuels Dennis, and this is Hey, I'm Listening.